Initially, I thought this Pride Sunday sermon would be easy to write. First, I thought I could use this time to educate on all things LGBTQ. I'm sure many of you still say, huh, when you hear all the letters that our community uses to identify ourselves, and it never hurts to update our language. But that's not really the point of this sermon, and even though I'm a teacher, this isn't a classroom, I'm not actually an expert, and a lecture hardly leaves room for the Spirit to work. Then I thought that I could share my coming out story. Some of you already know that I'm a bisexual woman, and if you didn't, now you know. And sharing coming out stories can be a powerful way to illuminate the experiences of those in the LGBTQ community. But I didn't love that I'd be making the sermon all about me, and maybe I'd run the risk of using the pulpit as a kind of therapy couch. If you're curious, feel free to come talk to me during Coffee Nook. So I did what I probably should have started with, and I read the readings for today. As I started to think about and ponder my reactions and thoughts to the readings, I started to get nervous about what I could say. I felt immense pressure to speak for my entire community and an intense pressure to get it right. I know my Bible pretty well, but I'm still not a theologian, and I have a ton of privilege in being able to pass for straight with my relationship, so maybe I shouldn't even be up here giving my thoughts at all. But then I came back to that Corinthians reading. It's one of my favorites and was actually a contender for a reading on Youth Sunday. The very fact that Pastor asked me to preach today illustrates so many of the points in that reading. I don't actually need to speak for my entire community, I just need to speak as me. So my individual insight, my reading of the Bible as a white, bisexual, bilingual woman in a mixed orientation marriage, who is a mother and a teacher, it's a different perspective than what we usually hear on Sunday. So here's what I see when I read that passage. I've heard a lot of sermons that jump to the end, the part about everyone having different gifts and different jobs. And that's great and important, but jumping to the end skips the really important parts that come earlier. In this reading, we have the awesome metaphor of the community as a body. This says not only that we are all different, but it's good that we're different. Growing up in the 90s, I was taught the colorblind or melting pot version of diversity. It's the idea that we're all really the same on the inside, we're all human, and differences don't really matter because we should treat everyone the same. But that's not exactly right. I've had a markedly different life experience than if I was, say, a trans woman of color in Lansing, or if I was a gay immigrant in Dearborn, than if I was a lesbian in Dundee. If I try to act like any of those differences are unimportant or refuse to note that they exist, I'm erasing part of what makes a person who they are. We have to recognize that there are differences before we can really be open to the second, or I think main big takeaway from this passage. Unfortunately, some of the things that make us different are the things that also dictate what makes someone a respectable member of society. It's not just that so many of us have different experiences, which should be a good thing, but that some of us have lives that are harder or more dangerous than if we had been born under different circumstances or been born a different person. There are members of our body that are suffering. God tells us to clothe those with great honor, those that are not considered honorable in society, and to treat with greater respect those who society says do not deserve it. As said in Corinthians, those who are more respectable do not need this greater respect. They already get this from society at large. That's not to say that someone with privilege will never know hardship, but they won't know it because they are, say, a foot instead of an eye. Those who are mistreated need the safe harbor of our community of faith even more than someone who is already welcomed in so many other places. Using that same metaphor, you don't put glasses on your feet, after all. So if that's our calling, how do we do that? How do we as individuals and as a group become a place of refuge? The one thing that we can all do, no matter what, is speak. There are far too many voices out there that preach hate and intolerance, so we must be equally loud or louder in our love and support. I have visited some churches before and been a ball of anxiety the whole time, wondering if I would hear hate from the pulpit or wondering what the people sitting next to me would think if they knew that it's pure chance that I have a husband instead of a wife. Even though I know it's so important for young people to have LGBTQ models, I was terrified to come out at work because there are no employment protections for sexuality in Michigan. But I felt relief and joy when I saw the Pride Month display in my local library this past week, and I get warm fuzzies with every supporting post online from friends and acquaintances. And I'm proud every time I walk over the rainbow welcome mat that we have in our narthex. I found a quote by Desmond Tutu that I would like you to walk away thinking about. If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. If an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse, and you say that you are neutral, the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality. So with that in mind, let us then honor those deemed inferior so that we all may rejoice with pride. Amen.